Let's talk about tariffs. So, US-Canada tariff flip-flops have Bitcoin miners on their toes. US President Donald Trump's I don't even know this. I'm a dummy. I always love it when they get all fancy. Shrewdness, swiftness, thievishness. The god Mercury. Okay. Anyways, the god Mercury has shifted the business landscape for Bitcoin miners. Bitcoin miners are adapting their business strategies as the continued trade war between the US and Canada makes energy prices and policies all the more uncertain. US President Donald Trump threatened to double his tariffs on steel and aluminum from 25% to 50%, leading the government of the province of Ontario to walk back its own plan to increase the cost of power exports to the US. Ontario Premier Doug Ford had promised to further increase the surcharge or even shut off the electricity completely, given further provocation. However, he appears to have softened his stance, at least for now. The trade war may have reached a lull, but some crypto firms are looking ahead to possible policy changes in order to protect their growth. Ben Gannon, the CEO of Canadian Bitcoin mining firms Bitfarms, told Bloomberg on March 11th that the recent energy price hikes, had they gone through, were unlikely to affect his firm's business. Bitfarms operations are mostly in Quebec and British Columbia, both of which boast significant hydroelectricity capacity in relation to the total provincial energy mix. Ontario, by comparison, is not as robust of an energy market, and over the last several years, they've really taken a big push on cutting back on base load capacity. But even through Bitfarms' energy situation, or even though Bitfarms' energy situation may look solid for the time being, Gannon said the tariffs have implications for what policy and regulatory frameworks are going to look like in the future. He said that his firm wants to see greater access to electricity markets as well as fewer regulations on setting up new business or new power applications. Energy policy has been a contentious area of debate in Canadian politics, with critics accusing the Liberal government, now led by Prime Minister Mark Carney, of harming the Canadian economy with their strategies to lower emissions. Gannon said, quote, "The opportunities that are present in the United States are also present in Canada, and I think this will resolve itself and end up in a much more deregulated and smooth and efficient market because for years it's been tied up in regulatory red tape." Tariffs on goods such as steel, aluminum, and other industrial products intended to encourage domestic production in the U.S. also impact Bitcoin miners, with some effects being unexpectedly beneficial. While Gannon noted that miners can control the Bitcoin price, they can control their electricity costs. One of the ways that we can do that is we can look for pockets of energy that are underutilized, that used to power heavy industry, dear Lord, excuse me, which has been outsourced to other countries over the past 20 or 30 years. According to Gannon, Bitfarms has operations in Pennsylvania, a Rust Belt state, heavily affected by the outsourcing of American steel and metals industries. His firm's assets could soon be in high demand if the U.S. manufacturing industry were to come back from the dead. Gannon said that Bitcoin miners have been investing heavily in energy infrastructure that used to power aluminum smelters and steel refineries and the stuff which was outsourced. Now Bitcoin miners have these assets, and as the pendulum swings back to America, those assets are now in high demand. Canadian miners like Bitfarms may be unconcerned for now, but Trump's tariffs on China have already begun to squeeze American crypto miners who import hardware from China-based firms like Bitmain. According to Bloomberg, shipments of Bitcoin mining hardware from China to the US were experiencing significant delays as of February 2025. Let me reload this. Still alive? There we go. Reload this too. Boom. We are having technical difficulties, but there we go. So heavy custom fees for inspections of Bitmain affiliated hardware have cost U.S. miners up to $500,000, according to Vishnu. I can't say that name, but the director of global logistics and services at Compass Mining Incorporated. New tariffs could make new imports of next-gen miners to the U.S. completely cost prohibitive, according to Syntec Digital CEO Taras Kulik. Now, here's my question, because obviously, like, people that could talk to this better would be like, obviously, Hawk in chat, who's saying that, yes, like, orders are delayed now. This does pose a really interesting problem, I think, to the U.S. I think it is a security issue as well, because like we've talked about before, the total hash rate for Bitcoin will be something that is a competitive advantage for a country. So you really want to incentivize this, and the manufacturing of all the silicon for ASIC miners being in China is a pretty big deal. I think this is what we definitely have exposed as a weakness for the US, is the lack of silicon manufacturing by and large. And I think it will be really important that we have some competition in the US from a manufacturing perspective. But on top of that, when we're talking about cryptocurrency in general, or mining Bitcoin in general, I still do think it's a very valid strategy to be stacking up on older mining hardware that is in the US specifically for Bitcoin, right? Because we've already talked about the ASIC issues with other cryptocurrencies. But if you're looking at a strategy here, if these tariffs do continue to impact, new miners coming into the US, et cetera, it's obviously going to drive up the price of everything that's already here. And that's just a basic supply and demand scenario. Now, if these things change and we see a shift in the pendulum surrounding, the trade war and tariffs between China and the United States, I think that could change, but I don't see any significant manufacturing changes taking place at this time. I think it would take way too long to get fabs up stateside to start manufacturing, on a serious level. That is the ultimate goal, but when we're talking about Bitcoin, I don't even know if that's fast enough, right? Because obviously the hash power race is going to be within the next, I think we have 4 to 12 years left, right? And after that, we really get to the point to where mining is just going off of essentially fees, and that fee parity will happen, and it'll all come down to, essentially what we're seeing. And I think we're seeing an accelerated rate of this on kaspa, but we'll see, the price of Bitcoin more and more be less affected by mining than it is now, right? So if you look at kaspa, for example, and how quickly the emissions have gotten to where 90% of it is in circulation already, the influence of the cost to mint kaspa becomes less and less. And the reason for that is because the people that are holding the kaspa are no longer reliant on the cost to mint, right? And this is where you have a significant supply and demand problem for miners in general, because the supply is no longer coming from the miners themselves. And this will eventually happen to Bitcoin as well. Now, what I've said before is that, when does the halving cycle stop? It happens, the halving cycle and traditional effect on price stops when fees on Bitcoin meet parity with block reward, right? At that point, you would have it essentially stabilize as far as price goes in relation specifically to the halving schedule. But it does bring into question if that will play out. And looking to kaspa as an example of that, which I have been doing, I'm not so certain that the price of Bitcoin will be fully or be impacted by miners at all once that parity happens, because all of the supply will already be in circulation. Therefore, the price is directly influenced by people that have no tie to the cost to mint, right? And it's something I think about a lot. I don't know which direction that goes. I mean, I can tell you when it will no longer have as much of an impact on price, but I don't know exactly what that will look like, right? China-based mining hardware producers like Bitmain could set up operations in other countries to avoid U.S. sanctions. During Trump's first term, when he imposed a 25% tax duty on a number of consumer electronics goods from China, many mining hardware producers moved to Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand to avoid tariffs. I know the FPGA manufacturer Osprey has a lot of manufacturing done in Vietnam. And I think there's fabs there. I don't know for ASICs if it would move there too, but that's just something of note. Bitmain even announced it would launch a U.S. production line in December of 2024 to provide faster response times and more efficient services to North American customers. Bloomberg noted that the firm did not provide the exact location of its U.S. line. Trump's economic policies continue to be a mixed bag for the crypto industry. Wild fluctuations in trade policy and last-minute reversals have made the market difficult to predict. Elsewhere, the European Union has promised to impose counter tariffs on the U.S., further threatening asset valuations. The co-founder and chief operating officer of blockchain Oracle solution firm Redstone told CoinGraph this could see Bitcoin sink to 75,000, a level not seen since November of 2024. Now, I don't know that this would affect price negatively on Bitcoin, tariffs in general. A lot of people draw correlations between the price of Bitcoin and macroeconomic factors. And in the past, at least historically, it's still played out to the halving cycle, right? And I don't know if we're really necessarily outside of the halving cycle. To know that we're out of it, I'd have to see what happens in the next 10 months to know for sure, right? So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I think it's still kind of sit back and wait and see what happens. I think the effect of, the supply and demand on stateside hash power does pose potential benefits to the cost or the price or the valuation of older hardware, right? At the end of the day. I hope you enjoyed this clip from the Crypto Mining Show. If you would like to see more from this particular episode, take a look up here. Don't forget to also subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support me directly, you can go to sonofatech.locals.com and become a member. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next Tuesday.